Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Divided Films, the podcast where audiences and critics disagree about movies. We discuss those movies, and we pick a side. With me, as always, is my co-host, Keith.
Hello.
And there he goes. And with us today, joining us back on the podcast, is our great friend, Bobby. Welcome back to the podcast, Bobby.
Thank you both for having me. I was looking forward to this all morning. It's a beautiful spring morning to sit inside and podcast. So let's
Yeah, maybe we'll get we'll record outdoors in a park or something this summer and see how that goes.
Class will be outside today.
So today, very excited to talk about today's movie, the 1996 family film Space Jam.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny. Wait a second. This movie falls into the category of having a negative score from critics and a mixed to positive score from audiences. On Rotten Tomatoes, 43% of critics approve, 63% of audiences approve, so 20% difference there. And the critics' consensus, while it's no slam dunk, Space Jam's silly, Looney Tunes laden slapstick and vivid imagination, vivid animation will leave younger viewers satisfied, though accompanying adults may be more annoyed than entertained. So, there you have it. Critics, I'm not surprised critics are not as crazy about Space Jam as audiences are. I don't know about you guys. I did watch this movie a lot when I was a kid, like a little kid.
Oh, yeah.
This was 1996.
And like a lot.
Yeah, like 1996 this movie comes out. And my family had it on VHS. So I think between the ages of like 5 and 8, I would watch this a lot. It was part of my family's like VHS rotation. We'd watch all the Disney classics and some other non-Disney stuff. But then this was in there for a while. But I think by the time I was 9 or 10, I had outgrown it. But what about you guys? You grew up with Space Jam, and when was the last time you think you had seen it?
Yeah, Keith, when was the last time you walked with Space Jam?
I jammed. Last time
you jammed.
Last time you jammed with Space Jam.
God, I think I did put it away into like a childhood like cupboard for like I think when I sold the VHS at a yard sale, I think I don't think it shows on TV that much. So, but I think memes and 90s kids have kept it alive that I'm like, yeah, I know this movie. I've seen it 100 times.
Yeah, Space Jam definitely benefits from the nostalgia factor, which we'll get into. But what about you, Bobby? Was this a childhood favorite of yours? And when do you think you saw it last?
So I purposely didn't read anything about Space Jam before watching it again. I got a freak DVD copy from the library. Jealous, I would be. I wasn't giving Amazon $4.
Did you get a weird look from the librarian? Like,
I did because it came with Friday the 13th, so it was going to be a big night for me. But I purposely didn't read anything about Space Jam because I wanted to go in as fresh as possible. I haven't seen this movie all the way through in probably 20 years. So
yeah.
It was a big movie in my house because we were 5-ish when it came out. My brother was 2, and for about 2 years afterwards, it was my brother's favorite movie. It probably played once a week in my house from like 1996 to 1998. So I didn't realize watching again, I knew some of the lines. Like I was writing notes and like mouthing along with the lines because they were just lodged somewhere in my brain, and that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, it was like all like flashing back to you. Yeah, I caught this movie actually on TV like 4 or 5 years ago. I think randomly on, I don't know, some cable channel. And I was like, oh my God, this movie is insane. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Until I saw it. So going into the rewatch recently for this podcast, I kind of already figured what I was in for. But it is like the most jarring example of, oh, I loved this movie as a kid. And then you revisit it and it's like, this is nuts. Just because even like, okay, it's been a while since we did an episode where I kind of tried to sum up like the logline premise, but it's like impossible to do it for this movie because just the very idea of this movie is just Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes, and like take it from there, right?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's it.
And that's how they pitched it. That's how they pitched
Right,
it.
but the whole conceit of how you get that to happen is this really nutty roundabout way. Like, there are so many things that have to happen in their minds to get Bugs and Michael Jordan to meet up. And I'm like, watching this, like, you couldn't think of anything else. This is how you thought that it would, but this is what it would take in your minds for Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny to meet up. And like the whole plot of, an alien animated failing amusement park that needs new attractions, and so they want to kidnap the Looney Tunes. Like,
we've seen it before, JJ. I mean, come on. This alien amusement park idea is rote by the time.
Tale is old as time.
Tale is old as time.
Yeah, right? Oh my god.
Well, it's funny that it comes out that at the same-ish time as Roger Rabbit, and you have at least I don't have any trouble buying the premise of Roger Rabbit, which is like a noir with cartoon characters. And this one, they have to work so hard to be like, why would Michael Jordan play for a cartoon basketball team?
Yeah, it's like Roger Rabbit is so seamless and like just like with this world of cartoon and live action mixing. And this, you're right, it's so labored the way they have to plot this movie and do all these things to get you to finally get the two main characters to meet each other. And
well, the history of this movie is this movie didn't just happen out of thin air. In the early 90s, they did come out with very popular commercials with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, and they were very popular. Like, people were marching in the streets for we want more Bugs and we love Michael. And Ivan Reitman, of all people, kind of pitched, why don't we make a movie about this? And
that's right. He's the producer, right?
And there's heavy Ivan Reitman vibes in this movie. At least that how I feel. But they kind of Ted Lasso'd it. They're like, we have to make, this is a very popular commercial series. How do we make a movie out of this? And then they're like, how would you guys make a Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan movie?
That's a really good question, but it would maybe be something a little less complicated and convoluted than this. And one of the biggest problems about having such a complicated plot that they have to overly establish is that they give a ton of screen time to these new alien cartoon characters. They get more screen time than some of the Looney Tunes do. Did you notice that? These little alien dudes, and then they turn to the Monstars, they're on screen and they get more lines than almost all the Looney Tunes do, with the exception of Bugs and Daffy. And I thought that was really annoying because they were the worst part in the movie, and yet they are constantly on screen. I couldn't take these characters.
I was happy. I was surprised by the amount of screen time and welcome screen time of the basketball players whose powers that they've stolen from.
I like
that. They
them.
were having fun. They made me laugh. It didn't. You could have taken those out of the movie and nothing would have changed. But Charles Barkley made me laugh. So did Bugsy.
That was surprising to me too, because I went in thinking my bias was going to be, okay, Michael Jordan's not going to pull his weight, and these basketball players who are they're just real basketball players wouldn't be able to function on camera, but they're very fun. And I was even looking up, to JJ's point, some of the voice actors, like Billy West is in this. He plays a couple of the Toon Squad characters, but I didn't recognize any of the Monstar people. Not to say that they didn't do a good enough job, but you're right. There's a lot of time given to these new cartoon characters that the audience not only has no familiarity with, but are the villains for 90% of the movie.
They're like the villains, but they're also just not funny. I want to get more of Elmer and Yosemite and Sylvester and all those other great classic characters. And I get that Bugs is the main face of the Looney Tunes. He's everyone's favorite and he's going to get the most screen time. Fine. But I don't think for example, Elmer Fudd gets more than 2 lines in this whole movie, and yet you get a whole arc with these stupid little alien creatures that no one cares about.
But you learn to care about them, JJ. That's the point of the film.
I didn't at all.
I forgot about the Pulp Fiction reference. I mean, I think everyone
So random.
I'm surprised they found time for even the smaller characters. Like and JJ, you and I bonded over our love and knowledge of Looney Tunes. You especially, like you know them by error.
Yeah.
But like the two mice announcers.
Yeah.
They kind of got like they had their moment. Foghorn Leghorn had their moment. Like it's
Well, even too, what I kind of got a kick out of was in the the basketball game, which is like the last 30 minutes of the movie.
It's a long climax too. That's like a half of the movie is the final game they're playing.
Yeah, well, like mercifully so, because like it's a short movie and it's like for adults like kind of torture, if especially like from the fact that this movie is very pandering to little kids most of the time. But if you watch the basketball game, if you look in the background, like a lot of the like secondary and tertiary Looney Tune characters are in like the stands, and I kind of like that, I guess. Like for example, I remember catching at one point the Muggsy and Bugsy, like gangster guys, like, oh, so like they're hiding in the stove, eh? Like remember that whole bit, like Muggsy and Bugsy. You might Rabbit.
The lion, like, how many sugar lumps do you want? One or two.
Oh yeah, that character. Yeah, like they had a bunch of like the one-off, or like maybe some of these characters or villains have appeared like a few times in the classic short, just in the background. And so I thought that was like maybe a nice way of like recognizing like the large like cast of characters that are in Looney Tunes, because again, like you're going to devote most of your time anyway to Bugs and Daffy, like the stars of the franchise. But with the basketball players, I was surprised how much I was enjoying their sequences. In fact, I like in the first act of the movie, I was like actually really enjoying all the live action stuff with like Michael Jordan, almost to the point where I'm like, why don't they they should have just done a movie with just like Michael Jordan's life after basketball. It seems like there was some actual like nice family movie being made, and then the Looney Tunes kind of hijack it, and you get this sort of much more insane plot, right? Because it's like, oh, Michael Jordan after he retired, and everyone kisses his ass, and he feels uncomfortable about it, and in his neighborhood, people like are always saying like, like waving at him, and he like has this sort of like unwanted, pampered life, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But then like he gets like sucked down a golf hole, and now he has to like be in this like green screen world of Looney Tunes, and the movie like goes off in a different direction.
I really like this alternate version of like a real human drama, Space Jam, where it's just Michael Jordan's life post like, learning how to be relevant in a world that's forgotten Michael Jordan or indeed remembers him too much. I think that there's a movie.
I thought it was nice. They set up like his family and his kids. I'm like, oh, this is all nice. Like maybe, I don't know. Like obviously like the kids are there for like the Looney Tunes, so they don't care about any of those scenes. But as an adult, I was kind of appreciating like, oh, they're actually kind of establishing this kind of nicely in the live action parts. And then you have like a random cartoon spaceship fly by. Like, and no one seems to really like react normally to it.
What's going on here?
Why, Michael? I thought you'd never ask. You see, these aliens come from outer space, and they want to make us slaves in their theme park. What do we care? They're little, so we challenge them to a basketball game. But then they show up, and they ain't so little. They're huge! We need to beat these guys, because they're talking about slavery. They're going to make us do stand-up comedy, the same jokes every night for all eternity. We're going to be locked up like wild animals and then trotted out to perform for a bunch of lowbrow, bug-eyed, fat-headed, humor-challenged aliens. What I'm trying to say is, we need your help!
The nostalgia is strong with this one for me.
Oh, okay.
Like but I also having not seen it in a while, and people have analyzed this movie in the year, like, Space Jam is a bad movie. I was like, oh, I'm probably not gonna like it, and I actually ended up saying this is it's not like the best movie, but it's actually, I think the writers who've worked on like Trading Places, and they did the Santa Claus, they had a good amount of writers on this.
Yeah, I saw 4 that were credited. That's a lot of writers to have on
usually
a movie
a
like
red
this.
flag for most movies.
It can be a red flag, but I think, and it's not like it's not like the perfect comedy, but there are lines that I think I take issue with. The adults may be more annoyed than entertained, because I don't know if I think a dad or mom bringing their kid to this, I think there are lines in this for adults that I know there are lines that went over my head.
Yeah.
like Charles Barkley, like I'll never date Madonna again.
Yeah. Well,
Like
What a
there was
time.
some funny. I'll defend some of like the stuff that Bill Murray and Bill Murray clearly was doing it for a favor for Ivan Reitman. He even says so.
Bill Murray
like,
was good. Bill Murray was good in this one. He made me laugh pretty consistently.
yeah,
and
yeah. Me
I'm gonna-
too.
There were some jokes. There were moments I laughed.
I do think this movie does speak to people born in a certain. Because I was asking older people during this week, like, how's your feelings on Space Jam? Like kids that are only like 10 years older than us, and they don't have nostalgia for it. They're like, eh.
They were too old for it when it came out.
I'm going to defend this movie for those kids born like those 90s kids born during this time because I think it's serviceable. I think it's funny.
We were the right age for it, right? Like we were like young, like little kids at the time, and I think that was like maybe like the demographic, like kids like 5 to 10 years old. And also it helped because this was also the age when, for example, Cartoon Network would play like the classic Looney Tunes shorts a lot. Like on the weekends, you'd have these like 2 to 3 hour blocks on Cartoon Network, and they do these like Looney Tunes shuffles. Like, you know, you get like all those cartoons being played. And
do kids have that now? Do you know?
I don't think they play them on TV anymore. I mean, now with HBO Max, you can just go on and watch them. You know, like they have like the big library there. But that was like a Saturday morning cartoon sort of thing. Like you go and you just kind of put them on for a while, and you don't know which ones they'll play. And that's how I watched Looney Tunes growing up. So like there was already a base that kids or a familiarity kids had with Looney Tunes. So like you go into this movie and you recognize all the signature things that the characters are doing, like Tweety Bird, like, oh, I thought I saw, oh, I did, like all that kind of stuff the characters are known for doing. You already kind of recognize that. But like, yeah, I think kids now, I don't know if kids now really know the Looney Tunes like we did when we were their age. Because they don't play them on TV.
I'd be shocked to know. By the way, your Tweety is spot on. Just wanted to say, like,
really?
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I do think that this movie injected some like new life into the Looney Tunes.
I think
but
that
I
was
do
the
agree
idea.
with you.
That was the idea to maybe also revitalize the franchise, maybe.
And I don't know how well Six Flags is doing now, but I do. Are the Looney Tunes and the Muppets? I feel like they're kind of the same, where they're like we treat them as real. They're legacy people who can't really have a show on their. They can't really hold a show now because they don't have the popularity of today's youth. But we treat them as like real. Like Kermit was on The Masked Singer. Bugs can go on a late night show and give an interview. We treat them. They're like crooners. They're old crooner legacy characters but they can't.
Let me tell you something about
what
that
I mean?
real quick. Little tidbit here. It is actually like really bizarre, but it is a thing that sometimes a Muppet will go on a late night talk show or a daytime talk show, or you might like, you know, animate Bugs into a late night talk show sequence or something. But what's really strange is, and this I had this experience once when I was like working on a talk show, and they had R2D2 and C3PO there. You have to act like they are real people. When you are on set and they're getting these characters on, you cannot acknowledge that they are just characters. And like with C3PO and R2D2, like when we interacted with them, we were not allowed to say, oh, we loved your movie or something, because they'd be like, what's a movie? You had to treat them like they were real people, and no one could see them partly in costume. No one could, like, you know, if it was a Muppet, no one could like see the puppeteer or something. You had to like act like they were real people, and this is in an environment full of adults. It's like it's not like there's any children around that you don't want to spoil it for. So just a little weird tidbit there. And the Looney Tunes are the same way, where it's like, yeah, they are these larger than life characters, and we all love them, but like, they're not real people. Like, calm down. Like these, like the people who own the intellectual properties are like very particular about how you handle these characters, which I find kind of fascinating.
But I don't know. Like, I mean, the Muppets had a very successful movie, and then they had a whatever sequel. And I know the Looney Tunes kind of had the same thing, that movie with Brendan Fraser. I'm just curious. I know they're making they're making a sequel to this movie coming out this year to Space Jam. Are the Looney Tunes, like, do they still like, we like them and all, but do they have clout for Generation Z?
I don't know. I think that people will watch it because they love LeBron James. Like, I think he's enough maybe to get people interested, but as much as people like are, at least kids are aware of the Looney Tunes, they definitely don't know like the shorts and like the content as well as previous generations do. So I'm not sure what the appeal is there.
I don't know either, and I think we could talk for a long time about the efficacy of sequels to movies from the '90s that no one asked for, but specifically with Space Jam, it's almost I don't know if I'm gonna go see it or not. Hopefully movie theaters have gotten back on their feet by that point. I'd love to just go see a movie, but it's almost kind of missed. It kind of comes in waves, like they've missed the mark. Like 90s nostalgia is fun for when we're in like our 20s, but now that we're kind of edging past that, it's sort of like, I don't know if I want to go see Space Jam 2, because even LeBron James at this point is now, one of the greatest NBA players of all time, but he's not really the star any longer. Even his time has kind of like, come and gone as far as a professional sports player. I mean, there was Trainwreck, which I know you fellas did as well. So he had kind of the same arc as Michael Jordan.
He wants to like get more into show business, it seems, right? Because he was in Trainwreck, which I expressed was like a completely pointless role for him in that movie. And now he's in this, and it seems to me that he wants to be on the Lakers simply because he wants to be in Hollywood. I don't know. That's my theory. But if this is like maybe his vehicle, like it's his first starring role in a film, like let's see. I don't know. I wasn't impressed by his acting from what I've seen before. I don't know if he can carry a whole movie, but then again, Michael Jordan wasn't bad in the original Space Jam. I'm sure people questioned his acting abilities. It wasn't like the work.
It deserves to be questioned.
It's not amazing, but like it's like for the fact that he was surrounded by green screen for 50% of the film, I think he like did his best as you could expect, which is like
true.
And maybe like slightly better. I don't know where the bar is for a basketball player with no acting experience doing like a total green screen movie. But whatever that bar is, I feel like he's a little bit above it.
There were a lot of close-ups of his face. I noticed during
it's all reaction. I can imagine the direction. Like Michael, like look to the side and be confused. Now look right at the camera and be like, "What the hell's happening?" And then we'll just animate around.
Now
that.
Now they shoot the Mandalorian on that set. Have any of you guys read the plot to the new Space Jam?
I'm not.
No, me neither.
The plot. And before you have a reaction when I say, think about the first movie and its plot.
I'll try.
Don Cheadle plays an algorithm. He's the villain, and he steals...
Wait, what does he play?
I think algorithm or something. Like, that's his name.
Are you saying Al Gore Rhythm? You're saying the President Al Gore and
Vice President Al Gore is
his name. He's an algorithm, and his name is like a algorithm.
He's
or
playing
something.
An algorithm.
Rhythm.
How do you play an algorithm?
Carefully.
JJ. Once again, remember the plot of the first movie.
That's like saying I'm playing
a variable.
Yeah, like what?
And I know what WB is up to with this. John Cheadle's playing a bad guy, and he's stealing followers from LeBron James's Instagram. So
what are we gonna do?
LeBron James goes into he kind of Wreck-It Ralph 2's it. He goes into the serververse, and this is I think this is their Wreck-It Ralph 2 because they're going he comes upon Bugs Bunny. I don't know if they're going to play basketball in this. I honestly have no idea. But he goes into the serververse, and you are going to probably see Wonder Woman, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. You're going to see WB-laden characters. And if they all play basketball, this is going to be on HBO Max one day. Sometime in the summer.
It's coming soon.
And I did say that's stupid. And then my brain reminded me. Remember the plot of Space Jam. That is all.
But this is even more convoluted, and even I have even less interest in, or what do you call it, investment in this sort of plot. The whole plot is someone is stealing his Instagram followers. Oh my god, I'm gonna lose sleep over that.
And it's not called Spacegram, just for the record, right? Even though he's looking at Instagram.
It's called Space Jam 2, the new legacy.
But they're no longer jamming. The jam is the basketball
Yeah,
element.
they're not playing
It's
basketball.
no longer a jam.
Listen, Space Jam, I guess.
No, they should play back. I have no
Space
idea.
Jam, I guess,
We
could
blame
be
you,
anything.
Keith.
It could be anything you want, right? But like, I'm pretty sure it should involve basketball at some point, especially if LeBron James is in the movie and it's a sequel to a movie about basketball.
Look, I woke up one day a couple of weeks ago and to people arguing about Lola Bunny, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, why are people arguing about Lola Bunny? I hate, like...
Lola Bunny is... I have like my only weird thing with Lola Bunny is, where did this character come from? I just found it kind of funny when I was thinking about it. Like, they established that, like, in this Looney Tunes world, all these Looney Tunes know each other, right? They have meetings and stuff, and they interrupt each other's cartoons. They all know each other. But then
They're unionized.
Right.
They mentioned it.
Yeah, they haven't mentioned that.
I'd love to see that
then-
movie.
Yeah. But the labor struggle of the Looney Tunes. But then, during the tryout sequence, Lola Bunny shows up and she's like, "Hi, my name's Lola Bunny," and like no one knows who she is. I'm like, what? Like, how could there be a character no one has met yet when they all seem to like know everyone else? I just thought like that was kind of funny. It seemed to me that they were writing this movie and making this movie, and maybe like an executive or a focus group or someone was like, there's no female Looney Tunes, and so like they had to hastily like write in this like female Looney Tunes character who's new to the franchise in this movie. But I just thought that was funny. Like, they all know each other except this one new character no one has seemed to have met before. Like, where has she been this whole time?
I'm watching this app knowing, like, people were, like, sexually charged by Lola Bunny. I'm like, what, stop, like, people are sexually charged? I don't see anything sexual
Well,
with this,
she
and
does
you
like
shouldn't be
she does
sexually-
like tease a couple of the characters at one point when she's like, "Don't call me dull," and she's like,
Yeah, but I don't think she's drawn in any, like, I mean, she's drawn like a female rabbit, but I don't think it's like, oh, wow. It's not like Jessica Rabbit from Who's Line,
Right.
not from Who's Line, from Who Framed, where it's like it's supposed to be sexual.
I watched this.
People had sexual awakenings with this fucking
I
thing.
mean, I honestly don't put anything past anybody, especially in the internet age, so that doesn't really surprise me.
I'm not here to get
go
down
ahead,
on anyone's jams as far as their sexuality. But I watched this with Maddie, and Maddie has no attachment to this emotionally. She never saw it before, and I asked it partly because she had heard of the controversy of Lola Bunny, which melted her brain a couple weeks ago, as it did with Keith, I think too, and she was watching it for that, and Maddie said, I see what's happening here, but really what makes her weird is the music, because it's the only time where like a smooth sax comes in, and outside of wearing a tank top instead of a full jersey, Maddie was like, it's not like it's not. She said, to use her words, it's not as bad as I thought. I was led to believe it was, which I agree with.
Yeah, of course it was blown out of proportion, as the internet tends to do every once in a while. But that was like a weird touch too, like the saxophone thing, and then also like Bugs is like super horny for her, right? Like the second she like steps in,
There are some jokes.
he's like
he
There are
turns.
some
he gets like
jokes.
stiff
Yeah.
as a board at one point, like, oh, that's
He
subtle.
sure does.
If you know what I mean.
But so all these people that were attracted to Lola Bunny just really can't listen to smooth jazz. Is that it? Like, like
You could do smooth jazz over anything and it makes it sexier. So like,
probably.
That's very true.
now I find that interesting too that Maddie watched this with basically like no. I mean, I'm sure she knew like a few things about it ahead of time, but like without really having seen it fully before. Because I was watching this and thinking to myself, if you're like an adult watching this for the first time, it must be so jarring when you get like everything that's Michael Jordan in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it just goes into outer space to this animated amusement park. It's like a huge sharp left turn. It's like, wait a minute, what's happening now? It's like Michael Jordan as a kid, Michael Jordan's career, Michael Jordan's retiring, cut to outer space amusement park with a sleazy alien voiced by Danny DeVito. It's like, wait, is this the same movie? What's going on now? I've never. It's like the least smooth transition from like one plot point to another that I've ever seen in any film before.
I promise I'll never swear again. I'll never get another technical. I'll never trash talk.
I've got other skills. I could go back and work on a farm.
Really?
Or maybe I could go back to the jungle and be a missionary again.
What are you saying? That I'm trying to disobey my mama?
I didn't say that. You did, Muggsy.
But I love my mama.
Still can't find anything wrong with us.
Hey, maybe there's nothing wrong with us.
That's right, Muggs. He was just in our head.
We're fine. It's just some psychosomatic deal or something to do with the moon or the alignment of the planet.
I'll never go out with Madonna again.
Maddie probably turned to you going, when's the jam going to start?
she was humming the song. Now, as long as we're on the subject, she was humming the jam song. The real winner of this movie, as far as I'm concerned, is the music.
Yes.
I think the music is great.
100%.
Fantastic.
100%. That has stood the test of time.
I agree. The soundtrack is great. In fact, every single time I hear the song, I Believe I Can Fly, I do think of Space Jam. It does, like, bring that back to me.
And not the person singing it.
Well, no.
Yeah, it's
but there is, I Believe I Can Fly. There's what were some?
Time keeps on slipping into the future.
Yes.
You had Barry White. You had Barry, like, I heard that song like a couple months ago.
Were you
and
about to
my
do
mind
Barry White
immediately-
in falsetto?
It's like the opposite of him.
I was gonna do the chorus. I got the basketball. No, I heard that song.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like. I think it popped up on my YouTube algorithm, and it's like I immediately thought of Space Jam. You gave Charles Barkley a great scene.
Yeah.
In this
And
movie.
I like that he was like getting beat by like a bunch of kids, you know. I thought that was actually really interesting to have Barry White come in.
Them just waving their hands.
Trying to block the ball that isn't there.
They were pretty good at being like, you know, idiots on the court once their talent was stolen, which is like kind of weird. But like, you know, like I thought that was kind of fun for them, just kind of be like, whoa, what's going on?
Even the score by James Newton Howard isn't all that bad. It's
An Oscar-nominated.
It sounds like it sounds like the 90s, and you know, when you see movies like Hocus Pocus, which you've done, and Tommy Boy, there's a lot of strings like da-na-na-na-na,
Yeah.
da-na-na-na, and it's all over the place, and I love it because it reminds me of being a kid. But it's not the music, whether it's the soundtrack or just the score, like both are pretty solid. Like there's not a lot to say bad about.
Yeah,
them.
no, I agree. And I'm trying to think. There's like another, like Seal sings one of the songs. He does like a cover of, I think I Want to Fly Like an Eagle. That's it. I think that was also like really, really good. And so like it's catchy, and probably like the most memorable thing about this movie. All those songs you hear and it brings you back to this. So that's definitely a strength. And I agree. I love 90s scores. There's something they can be like really manic at times, which suits this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like, again, it's like the nostalgia factor. You hear those scores, remind you of all those other movies of that era and just being a kid. And I like
Well,
that.
I think of all the movies in the that came out through the 90s that like I was a 90s kid and all that. Like I think Space Jam is at the top, I would say. Like there's a reason why it's like it's standing the test of time. A movie like this, like I think when like I was born in the 90s, I remember Space Jam. It like the score, the plot itself, the jokes. I don't know. It's nostalgia plus is what maybe I could call it.
The website is still up. You can go on the Space Jam
Yes,
website.
it's still up. I checked it out. It's still up.
That's like maybe like the early, that was like when movies started to make their own like web pages, right? That was like the beginning of that, right? Around the mid 90s when it's like, oh, like it's coming soon, Space Jam. Check out more at spacejam.com. And I was like, okay.
Get yourself a screensaver.
Yeah, play some games, play some like online games or something. You know, as much as I feel like a lot of critics were not crazy about this movie when it came out, two critics that were our favorites, Siskel and Ebert. But I feel like they were kind of biased because those two were Chicago-based critics, and of course Michael Jordan, you know, Chicago Bulls. And I think they were like privy to like want to like this movie because, you know, here is like the hero of their city that they're based out of. So I feel like they were like already kind of open to this idea of like a movie with their like athletic hero of their city.
Oh man, but Wayne Knight, like that's the supporting as like I put supporting in like quotations because it's really kind of the Michael Jordan show. Wayne Knight is excellent in this.
Well, you know, he does his Wayne Knight thing, you know.
And which is partly the fault of the 90s too. Like is still very much in vogue to be like, oh, you're the funny fat guy. And I don't mean to disparage Wayne Knight. I think he's a great actor, but all of his scenes were like, you're a clumsy oaf, and that's pretty much what you
a dork
and a dork.
Well, even I feel kind of bad for him, for the actor towards the end when he gets flattened, and they do that whole thing where they like, which I thought looked kind of freaky, like it didn't age too well.
Oh.
When he's flattened, and then they have to like blow him up, and then like he's deflating. That looked kind of like freaky 20 years or 30 years later. But
the human CGI is terrifying. The part that's sort of soured the most is the human CGI. It is.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
That
rough.
was a little nightmarish.
I remember thinking, being freaked out by when Michael Jordan's turned into a basketball.
Yeah.
I'm like, this sounds, even the way he sounds, I'm like, this. The visual effects
his voice gets really high at one point,
this.
and they turn him into like a little square ball thing and like dribble him around, and that was kind of like jarring. Also, I don't know if even like back then that would have looked good. But so
I wrote in my notes at minute 37, Jordan Ball is terrifying. That's a direct quote from my notes.
I agree. That was like
the way he screams.
That whole sequence was pretty unpleasant. My biggest grief with this movie is just I feel like the Looney Tunes. There's like a disconnect with me between like what makes the classic Looney Tunes great and how they're being utilized in this movie. I just feel like at times it seems like the people who are writing this movie just didn't really understand the essence of some of the characters, right? Like Porky Pig is like just constantly like a big scaredy cat in this movie, like I wet myself, and he's constantly fainting, and he's a big wimp and stuff. But that's not really at all who the character is from like the cartoon shorts. Like that's just like one example. I just feel like even though they're referencing all like the classic stuff that the characters did in their shorts, it just seems to me like they're not really getting like the essence of the characters. Like a lot of the Looney Tunes humor in the movie does still seem to me to be catered towards little kids. But what made the Looney Tunes so great from like the classic shorts in the 40s and 50s is that the humor was really universal. Like I still find them just as funny now as I did back when I was a kid, the physical cartoony humor. And here it's like they're missing that magic for me at times. So I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
It doesn't really allow them to. I did actually. The basketball players were great. Bill Murray, like I said, is pretty fantastic because he kind of is aware of what he's supposed to be doing. Yes. He's talking to green screens, but as a man who is aware that he's going to control the scene. Whereas I feel like Michael Jordan is sometimes reacting to things that aren't there, not his fault entirely. But the Looney Tunes are never given the opportunity to go absolutely zany because they're held back by the human element. If it was a complete Looney Tunes movie, you could have chaos and it would be fine. But they meet in this middle area that sometimes works. I laughed a couple times at the Looney Tunes, but sometimes it just feels like they're being restrained by the content of the movie.
Also by the plot, because they have to like think of like, oh, let's challenge these little aliens to a basketball game. Like that's something the Looney Tunes would like go to, like as if we've ever seen any Looney Tunes play basketball before themselves. But they're also, I feel like, held back by just this very convoluted story.
To harken back to our very first episode that we did with Bobby Hook, it's kind of like something where like Steven Spielberg came out and said like, I could have done better. But in a later after Space Jam came out, and in later years they interviewed Chuck Jones and like, what do you think, Chuck? And he's like, he was highly critical of the movie. He felt it strayed too far from the source material, that Bugs would never recruit Michael Jordan to do his own battles. Bugs would do it. Like, you're kind of echoing like Chuck Jones's. It's kind of funny that like you feel this same way. My point to all that, and it's neither like it's more of an observation, is that when it comes to animation, or maybe any franchisable thing in general, but we'll keep it to animation right now, doesn't that happen over time? Like, I mean, Bobby, you and I have talked hours. We quoted Simpsons for hours, but
still do.
The Simpsons different characters now than they were during the golden age? like if someone were to make the Flintstone cartoon now, wouldn't they be different from the Flintstones of the time?
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
And that's neither a good or a bad thing. I think it is.
Nothing stays stagnant. You're right, and there, I think more. I didn't read Chuck Jones's criticism, but I imagine it was more the ethos of the character is not that the lines changed, but more that they were not allowed to be absolutely loony, as the name would suggest.
I agree.
Granted, JJ, they should have been loony.
Yeah. That's my only thing. More.
I do
loony.
agree with you that.
But I agree that definitely the cartoons should evolve over time. I mean, even when you look back at like the 30s, 40s, and 50s of the Looney Tunes, you can see Bugs evolving through those decades, and Daffy Duck, and like all those characters. They did evolve in like that golden era of animation, but I guess where they were taking it in the 90s with this film might not have just been a direction, right? They can evolve, but maybe you don't like where they're being taken to, right? So I agree, like the idea of Bugs recruiting like outside help is something that, okay, like maybe he might not have really have done, because in all his classic shorts, like he could always just pull something out of nowhere and like fix his problems, right? That was like something the Looney Tunes can do by their very nature, is just conjure things out of nothing to like defeat the villains of their shorts.
To put on my cynical glasses for a moment, this is a movie selling the sainthood of Michael Jordan. Like this is they made this movie because it was a successful commercial, right. And they're like, we could do like. I don't want to say they threw it together. I actually think they put some thought into this, and I think Ivan Reitman put his mark. He technically directed the movie. Like they kind of did a Poltergeist situation. The guy Joe Pica was the director of the commercials, but he's not that experienced. So Ivan Reitman kind of did the secret directing, and his name. I don't know. His trademarks are kind of like throughout the movie. But it is, they didn't know, they couldn't Ted Lasso it. We didn't know what kind of we could do back then.
Well, I'll say that definitely Michael Jordan is the spotlight of this movie, and the Looney Tunes are like his supporting cast, right? So basically, it's like that's another thing that's restraining the Looney Tunes, is that they have to basically be catering to Michael Jordan, and it is his movie basically, because a lot of the things are pointing to him. Like I thought it was kind of like interesting when he decides to like put himself on the line there at the end, and like if he loses, he's going to be like at this amusement park, like doing basically what he's doing on Earth already, which is he's
going to be an indentured servant. Yeah,
which, by the way, made me feel a little uncomfortable when they were like, we're going to own you, and I was like, oh, like that's kind of weird, but I kind of I don't know, that's neither here nor there. I mean, maybe it is, but anyways, my point is, like, that kind of circles back to what he was experiencing in the first act. That was like a little bit of payoff. Like, your living nightmare on our like amusement park planet is not actually that different than what you're experiencing.
I didn't realize that until now. I didn't realize that his nightmare is just an exaggerated version of his post-basketball life.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was like a little pointed there. Wow. I'm like, okay, like there is some thought in this movie for sure. But everything, again, has to revolve around Michael Jordan, which is fine. That's the conceit of the movie. But, if you're a Looney Tune fan, you're not going to, you go into it thinking that the Looney Tunes are the center of the stage. You're not going to get what you want or expect.
The animation for the nightmare is actually the most interesting animation that happens in the movie. It's different, and it actually is a little... It's effective because it's a little unnerving, and I was surprised at how well that scene still kind of looked after 25 years.
Yeah, that was like an interesting style to separate it from the animation that was so like happy and joyous throughout most of the movie. And so like, what do you guys think too? Like we haven't spoken about Danny DeVito, who is like the voice of this like sleazy villain, and like I don't know, Danny DeVito, I feel like has like this like largely unrecognized like voice work talent. Like he's actually a really great like voice work actor. I mean, after this year he goes on to be in Hercules, and he was like, I think the best part of Hercules in my opinion. But even like in Always Sunny, he'll like get these moments where he's like doing voice work for like some crazy video that the characters have recorded, and he has just, I think, like this like knack for voice work that really, I think, pays off as like what is for the most part like kind of like an annoying villain, but it's elevated by Danny DeVito's work.
Yeah.
I didn't know I didn't know Dan Aykroyd. I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite.
He
lines.
has some great moments.
That's a line for the adults. Yeah. But it kind of, I don't want to say it could have been done by anyone just because of how the character looks. But I didn't know who Danny DeVito was back then.
Oh, I didn't, but I didn't
really know.
And that's part of the reason why I think his vocal work goes sometimes unrecognized, because I feel like, people don't really think about Space Jam, and if they think about Space Jam, they're not thinking about Danny DeVito, who's voicing the villain, because, like, again, that could have been voiced by anybody. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he does kind of these, like, this voice work that's really, a little seamless. Like, you don't know it's him, and that's the risk also, too, when you hire someone to do voice work who is so famous, because you might just think of that person and not the character they're voicing. But for Danny DeVito, that's never really a problem.
No, he's great.
He's had quite the career.
Yeah,
I'm looking. He kind of mastered the art of having a career that he's not Tom Hanks. He's not like Tom Hanks. Kind of mastered the art of being successful every decade. But Danny DeVito, I mean, look at his 90s. He went from like a villain, then he directed Matilda, and then he did some voiceover work, and like he wasn't in any TV show. He didn't throw Mama from the train. He kind of. But I don't know. I always respect his career. And then he kind of like a new generation knows who he is because of Always Sunny.
He's also,
and this is welcome back to our Danny DeVito podcast.
He's
Divided DeVito.
Last thing I'll say about Divided DeVito is that he also like a very successful career as a producer too. He has like actually a lot of unsung like hero moments as a producer too. So just shout out to him whenever we get the chance. I'll be like, this is our Danny DeVito shout out here.
That's important for us to know. Yeah, he's knows what movie he's in. Bill Murray knows. Even like Larry Bird, like in their conversation is a great tete-a-tete. Like it's so the human element is so it is strangely as an adult more interesting than the cartoon element.
Yes, I
would
totally
agree.
I remember being a kid and being like so bored by like that golf scene. I'm like, just get to like the cartoon stuff already. But it was like the opposite this time around, because I actually was really enjoying that golf scene. Bill Murray wearing that ridiculous umbrella on his head and talking about how badly he wants to be in the NBA despite no basketball experience. I thought that was all great. I would like, that's why I was thinking like, just make a live action movie with these characters and forget the Looney Tunes.
After Wayne Knight takes the picture, he moves the camera and like, get that camera away from
like,
me.
What kind of film is that?
Bill Murray had a line in this that I caught. That he's like, I feel short when he was playing golf. And Bill Murray is like my height, 6'1", 6'2", but granted, when you're standing next to Larry Bird and Michael Jordan,
exactly.
You're gonna feel short.
He's wearing a shirt when he's golfing. I think it's a shirt with either basketballs or golf paraphernalia on it, which is just another touch that I didn't get as a kid, but it's very funny.
Actually, a lot of actors. I don't think Bill Murray was like the first choice, but because I read somewhere that not a lot of stars wanted to be a part of this movie.
Oh, sure. I mean,
I could see why.
When you hear that a project, I mean, I don't know. I feel like they had to have known, like, oh, this is a project that's inspired by like commercials from a few years ago. It doesn't sound like the most fulfilling work as an actor, and it might sound like something that could be a total bomb that might hurt your career, if anything.
And so I think the line like, Bill Murray, I have to ask, how did you get here? I'm a friend of the producer. Gaffer drove me. See, I'm like, that is I refuse to believe adults were not entertained watching.
They had their
That's
moments.
inside baseball.
Yeah, they had their moments. I think that actually is a really good moment, like from a Looney Tunes perspective, because Looney Tunes are always breaking the fourth wall too, and they do that a few times in this movie. But that was like a great fourth wall break because it's like subtle too.
In TV land.
Yeah. So I dug all that.
Well, time to go.
Did we get everything?
The shorts! In there?
Okay, I'll check.
I found the shorts.
one thing that I actually appreciated is it's not to the level of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the craft work of, if you ever seen a behind the scenes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the ways they implemented a cartoon moving stuff
Masterwork.
around.
That was absolutely like painstaking work that went into like merging animation and live action. It's actually like probably like the most tedious work that is like amazing. I'm always in awe of that movie.
I think it only happened in one scene, but it didn't go like when Bugs and Daffy were getting Michael's shorts.
Yeah.
They kind of implement. I actually appreciate it. Didn't go unnoticed.
Well,
for
you
me.
know what? I need to rewatch this one particular shot when Bugs puts one of the shoes in the bag. 'Cause for a second, it looked like a physical hand with a glove that was like moving it. It's like, okay, instead of like getting some magic to magically close this and animate the hand in it, let's just like have a quick moment of a physical hand doing it that to the untrained eye might be an animated arm, but actually I'm like, that looks like a physical arm that was made to look like Bugs Bunny.
And granted, the dog was completely green screen. You were like just matted in, like because he was big at times. He was like the same height, and I think it was a puppet holding it against the
size
kids.
ratio also kind of bugged me too, because at times it seems like Bugs and Daffy and these other cartoon characters are like roughly like human size. They're not that much shorter than Michael at some times, but then in that scene where they go to his house, they are like smaller than the dog. So I'm like, how big are these Looney Tunes in comparison to humans? It was like, whatever suited the scene, I suppose. There weren't any like set rules about that.
It's like the Cats problem, right, JJ? When they made the movie of Cats, they're different sizes in various scenes.
Yeah, right. That was like more inconsistent and more jarring because it was the whole movie in Cats. Did you guys notice too with Michael's dog? His name is Charles, and Charles Barkley, like a dog. Did you guys notice that maybe that was like a dig at Charles Barkley, who's in the movie, by the way? I feel like that dig would work better if he wasn't in the movie, but Charles Barkley is in the movie, so I wonder how he felt that it was like, oh, you named your dog after me, and like, are you saying I look like a bulldog?
I bet he would take it as a play. He would take it as a play. Oh, you got me, Michael. I'm gonna get you.
Just stopping by the podcast to say hello.
I
Thanks
just
for
really
joining us,
appreciate
Charles Barkley.
Like, I think I wouldn't be surprised if, because the 5 basketball players, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, I think because they were having fun, I wouldn't be surprised if I actually laughed during the fortune teller scene. Just because she was saying, like, she's basically describing the plot,
right.
And they're like, we're gone.
They do
Sorry.
that. They do that twice in the movie where they re-explain the plot. Once in the psychic scene, and the other when they bring Michael down, and like Bugs is like telling him what's going on, which I find also kind of weird in a movie. Like, you see what happens, and then now twice you have to have the whole plot explained. I mean, it's as if if you got people to follow along with this crazy story, then count yourself lucky, but you're pushing your luck if you're going to re-explain the plot twice.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was added in, because, like, you know what? We're having fun. What more could we do with these guys? Like, like the therapist scene was great. It's like, what? You want me to disrespect my mama? I love my mama. Like,
I didn't say that, Muggsy. You did.
A premature ejaculation joke that I missed.
Yo, yeah, like, do you have trouble performing? There was like, but what I thought was interesting too, like, so these aliens are stealing the talents of NBA players, which again, like, there's like no rules in this movie. Like, these are aliens. They have for some reason the ability to turn into like goo and steal talent from people, like whatever that means.
They had every power.
And Patricia Heaton and Dan Castellaneta are an item.
Yes.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, like a little cameo there. Why not?
Barkley's killing us.
Who's doing the killing? So, like, there's no rules. These aliens can do whatever you need them to do. But I thought it was interesting, like, oh, they're not going to steal the talent of probably the second most iconic NBA player at the time, which was Shaquille O'Neal, because he's busy doing another movie, which is Kazam, which is probably as crazy as this movie is. That movie is like utter garbage. So I thought that was funny. Like, they would have totally stolen his talent, but he's off doing another movie. They don't even reference him. It's not even like someone says Shaq. He's nowhere to be found. As if this movie takes place in a universe that Shaq was never born.
But that's the only difference. Everything else is the same, except there's no Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, exactly. There's just no Shaq. I wonder if for the new one they'll get like some of the other NBA players too, just as like if they're gonna do similar things that the first one did. I think that might be.
Do you think Michael? Do you see MJ making a cameo?
I really don't, but
they're gonna have Wonder Woman and Joker cameo in this movie. Like
I don't know if I'm too crazy about that, because that's like too much. It's like, I don't know. Isn't that also similar to like Ready Player One that also had a bunch of?
It's Wreck-It Ralph too. It's like they want to show off their synergy.
I guess I don't know. It seems like maybe then a big promotion for like the company itself, like and all their franchises, which.
Rebel Wilson will play the Bill Murray role. Like they'll just try to get like someone who shows up and does funny things sometimes.
Is she the modern Bill Murray, Rebel Wilson?
I'm trying to think of someone who just shows up and really doesn't act in movies so much as show up and say things that people sometimes find funny, and that was Bill Murray's. I mean, I like Bill Murray too.
A Rebel Wilson type.
What's your Rebel Wilson type?
Bill Murray of our time.
Yeah, that's a good question. Who's like the? I mean, I said that one in jest, but I'm trying to think now. Who's like the show? I'm going to show up at the end and sort of just carry the comedic element home.
If I had to choose someone that just for some reason just came right to my mind, if I had to choose someone to do that, it would be like one of the workaholics, like maybe like Adam Devine, right? Or Adam Devine, whatever, like how you pronounce it. Like he's someone who I can like see breaking the fourth wall and being this kind of like similar role as Bill Murray doing something like that. I don't know why he came to mind, but like I can see that working.
That's not a bad choice. I'd be okay with that.
There's only one Bill Murray.
Just bring back Bill Murray. I mean, he's still doing work. Just bring him back.
Like every time he really is like one of those actors that just like wanders. Like he doesn't have an agent. You have to call. Like, he'll give you a number, like a 1-900 number. Like, hey. Like he'll pop up in student films if you're nice to him enough.
Every
like,
movie, he elevates every movie that he makes a cameo in. Like Zombieland, right? Like if he just, as long as he makes an appearance, it's like it bumps up the score because everyone just loves Bill Murray. Do you guys have like a favorite Looney Tunes from back in the day, like one that you'd always get really excited to see, or just like a favorite character or moment?
I have I actually did enjoy either Bugs Bunny usually Bugs Bunny, but it was against Daffy, sometimes Elmer Fudd. I did enjoy the gangsters, actually. That was a favorite of mine. The ones you mentioned, JJ, the ones who are like the big was it Bugsy and Lugsy?
Bugsy and Mugsy, and he hides them in the stove. Oh, so they're hiding in the stove, eh?
Those were always my favorite as a kid, and yeah, that's probably one for me. Keith, I don't know. Did you have a favorite Looney Tunes when you were growing up?
Well, Bugs is my favorite. Just like I love the humor, but my favorite cartoon is probably, and JJ, you're much better with the names. Is when like Daffy is on the creator is messing with.
That's my favorite.
Daffy.
Yeah, that's my favorite as well.
And he's like, this is why we're friends, folks. Like, it ends with Bugs going like, ain't I a stinker? I think that's kind of perfect. Like just a perfect from start to finish cartoon. I think it won an Oscar.
Yeah, I agree. That is my favorite Looney Tunes as well. I mean, again, all the Bugs versus Daffy, duck season, rabbit season stuff. And actually all these ones were directed by my favorite Looney Tunes director, Chuck Jones, who we mentioned before. My mom was always amazed because I, for some reason, just like knew all the Looney Tunes directors, Friz Freleng, Robert McKimson. Like for just some reason, like I would pay attention to that. And Chuck Jones' cartoons were always my favorite ones. But that Duck Amuck one blew my mind because it was like the ultimate fourth wall break. And that was just, if you think about it, it's brilliant because it's like an ode to Daffy Duck because they change everything about Daffy Duck throughout the cartoon, what he looks like, what he sounds like, where he is. But he's always just still Daffy. And that's like what's so great about the Looney Tunes is that we just recognize these characters like so immediately, even though they have evolved. We all know what makes Daffy Daffy or Bugs Bugs. And again, that's kind of what was hurting me in this movie was just like that something that makes them so great. Like I was like not quite getting it. It was like close but not quite there. But those classics. I immediately went to, like, as soon as I got HBO Max a few months ago, that's like the first thing I did was just like raid that Looney Tunes library and revisit my favorites.
I gotta look
Do
at
they
that.
have all of them?
They have most.
Or like a good
They
amount?
have most of them. I believe they plan on like releasing the rest of them by the end of the year. I don't know why they don't do it now because they have the rights to all of them. But yeah, they're gonna have them all by I think the end of this year.
Like I love a good. I like another favorite is like Wile E. Coyote, and he's great with Roadrunner, but like I love just like the simple joke of him clocking in to get sheep. It's like, hey,
Oh
Ralph.
yeah, with the sheepdog. Yeah, and it's like their job.
Yeah, I always thought that was
They're
just
at
great.
work. And that was like also kind of more like adult humor, right? Like even though I liked it as a kid, like that's something adults can relate to more is like the minutia of working every day and it's like their job that they get paid for. Yeah, I remember those. In fact, I was thinking to myself too, we see the Roadrunner like throughout the movie, of course. But I'm thinking, like, why wasn't the Roadrunner like on the starting lineup of this like Toon Squad? Did you know?
Because they have no coaching staff, JJ. The Toon Squad has no coaching staff.
I'm like, okay, it makes sense for Tasmanian Devil to be on this team because I also like the Tasmanian Devil and he's like fast and strong. But like, why isn't the Roadrunner is like faster than a bullet? He should be on this team, just like whizzing past the Monstars.
His 3-pointers are a mess. That was the problem.
He's also terrible at free throws, I guess.
Yeah.
I can imagine like a white chalkboard of just all the Looney Tunes on it. It's just like, okay, Marvin, we forgot
He'll be the
Marvin.
ref.
Okay, he's the referee. Like he'll be the ref.
Which I thought worked. That was suitable for a character like that.
I didn't see and I'm not going. We don't need to go into it, but I didn't see Speedy Gonzalez. He probably was in the stands, but he was not.
Yeah, right. Because
he was in the stands. I did see him in the stands.
You would think too, a super fast character would be in it, but I think even by the mid '90s, he had already been considered like a controversial character. I think he was like one of the first.
Yeah,
one of the first Looney
I
Tunes that had
that.
his shorts pulled off the air because of.
But like I get Pepe Le Pew had his moment.
Like they try to give everyone at least like one little joke, like, oh yeah, Pepe Le Pew, like those two mice that they're doing the announcement. They try to give everyone at least, one moment, right? They even gave the witch was doing like something to
the witch, the Foghorn Leghorn's cousin, or son, like the nerdy.
Yeah,
the one with the glasses. He's hanging out in the gym. I'm like, of all the characters.
Yeah.
No, I'm a chicken hawk. I didn't see
I appreciate the effort to try to like, give everyone at least a moment, or again like draw them in the stands, because again you are attracting like old school Looney Tunes fans, especially like the parents, and so they'll appreciate all those little cameos, especially like given the fact that you can only give so much screen time. I mean, this is a tight movie. This is like less than 90 minutes. You have to devote a lot of time to like establishing this very complicated story. So there's only so much you can do to give every Looney Tune character their moment, which they tried to do, and like they for the most part did it. But again, when it came to like the main characters, I felt like it was like hit and miss.
Well, that's all, folks. That's my line.
Step aside, babe. Let a star do this. That's all!
That's all, folks.
Can I go home now?
So I think now we can get to our final thoughts on.
Right, scene one. Okay, let's dive in.
Welcome to our podcast on Space Jam.
We're now going to read the script to Space Jam.
Our 5-part series on Space Jam. But I think we can get to our final thoughts and assessment on Space Jam. So let's start with Bobby. What's your like final take on this, Bobby? And what percentage score would you give Space Jam?
I was afraid I wouldn't like it as much, and clearly it's not a stellar movie. But you mentioned JJ before. It every moment it sort of just clears the bar. It's like someone hopping over like the gymnastics bar and just making it. I'm gonna put this at 62, which is like I'm glad I saw it. It's probably something I'll watch once a decade, just as a reminder to be a kid. But that's plenty for me. That's all I ask of it. So 62 for me.
Okay. What about you, Keith?
I've said before on earlier podcasts that I try not to add nostalgia into it, but the nostalgia was strong with this one. And when I looked at the scores, I thought the scores would be the gap would be wider. I thought critics would absolutely hate this and audiences would absolutely love it. But I think reading the audience's comments, I think they kind of echoed a lot of our sentiments of, 3.5, 3 stars. Like, it's a funny movie. Going over the hurdles, it does it. I still believe adults can get a lot they can get something out of this movie. There's some good jokes for adults, and of course it's for kids. I think the audience got it right. 63. I think they got it perfectly right. I think that's an appropriate score.
In fact, the only reason I didn't give it I didn't agree immediately with the audience is there were some moments, like you said, JJ, where I'm like, they don't let the Looney Tunes go full out. So I I didn't mean to deduct a single point. I was just like that.
Well, that's why it's not like a 70 or 80.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the Looney Tunes have like this weird shoddy history with film because like there was just a time where they were releasing compilations of Looney Tunes shorts as like theatrical films. And I always thought that was odd. And then finally they give them like this like original movie that they're like not even like the main stars of. It's just kind of interesting. Like you could do maybe, I don't know, maybe they can't sustain a whole movie by themselves. I'm not sure. It's never really been tried before, like one like theatrically long plot, a full-length plot that is totally driven by the Looney Tunes.
Just ask Tom and Jerry.
Well, you know what? I'll say this too. Like I would never like Tom and Jerry, even when I was a kid. The Tom and Jerry shorts, I would always like. I usually like Looney Tunes would be preceded or followed by Tom and Jerry. Right? I would never watch those cartoons. I don't know why. But I didn't care for them.
Even Sonic, I guess, needs a human partner.
Ugh.
I guess.
No, I'm not talking. I've never seen the movie, but it looks like you're always going to be paired off with a human.
I guess the idea is you need to ground it in some degree to make like have some like relatable like stand-in like human person there, right? Some vessel to like have something to hold on to. But that's the idea, but I don't think that really is necessary. I think also the problem with this movie is that it's like so blatantly commercial, right? Like there's the one line that Wayne Knight has about like, put on your Nikes, let's get a Big Mac, blah, blah, blah. Like he throws in a few other brands there. And
not denying that.
It did a lot of times feel like a really long commercial, especially since it was like based on one. It's kind of apparent that it was. I don't know. I didn't dislike it as much as I thought it would. Right, I thought I'd go into it and be like, "Oh, this doesn't hold up at all." I did like some parts of it, but I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of my favorite childhood movies that I do want to show my kids, and I don't think this is one of them.
Oh boy.
I just don't know. I just feel like there's just a lot of there's just a lot better content in terms of like children and family entertainment, and also I just feel like it doesn't do the Looney Tunes as much justice as I thought it should. So I would give this like a 53.
All right, I understand.
90s kids, get him. No.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Swarm.
Yeah, watch out. I mean, the nostalgia factor definitely is a lot for a lot of people. But I don't know. Sometimes I watch this thinking to myself, like, oh, man, like, how did my parents watch this with me so many times as a kid? That must have driven them crazy. I don't know. They liked some parts of it. There were some parts for them, but just I don't think enough. So what's our final score, Keith?
I agree with the score. I'm okay with it. But I'm going to trust your opinion to make the final call because
is it close?
It comes out, it's 59.3.
59.3.
It's
so.
Oof.
Where do you think that falls in line? In like it.
See, so this is. This happens once in a while on this podcast where our score is like numerically closer to one side, but when it comes down to that 60% threshold, it technically is on the other side, right? It's technically a rotten, which is what the critics are, but numerically it's closer to what the audiences have. So I usually like to go by like the numeric. I know we're just like, because then I feel like that 60% threshold of fresh or rotten is like more arbitrary. Like on opinions to me should be more like a spectrum, right? And on the spectrum, our needle is closer to the audiences. So therefore, I will say we side with the audience on Space Jam. It's official.
Much like Michael Jordan's final basket, who just stretching just a little bit farther to get to the basket.
Yeah, that was a little uncanny valley to me. That I was like, ugh, that really long arm. Ugh.
I do think this movie is like a 59. I think the audience would agree with this score. Unless you absolutely love this movie. But I do.
We had like one other movie that had like a very similar score that was like 59%. It's like, of all the movies that we give a rotten score to, this has the highest of that category. It's as close as it can get while still being in that category.
You know, if we just talk for another 20 minutes, we'll have talked longer than the movie is. So I say we keep it going.
On that note, that's always a sign that it's time to wrap it up.
Thanks again, Bobby, for joining us.
Yeah, Bobby, thanks for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you on the pod.
Oh, please. It's my pleasure. I had so much fun on this, and I can't wait till I hear the next episode that you guys have coming out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, man. Thanks for your unwavering support and involvement on the podcast. And looking forward to seeing you all guys in person, hopefully soon.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks, everyone out there, for listening, and join us another time for another Divided Film. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.